And we are live. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Bigfoot Odysseys Researchers Report. Got a great show planned for you tonight. I am Kerry Arnold. With me, as always, producer and co-host of the report, Miss Daniela Aiolo. How are you, Daniela?
I'm good, thank you.
This is our 80th show. We're
Hello.
coming up quickly on 100. Our guest for this evening, coming to us all the way from the Pacific Northwest, Washington State, with the Bigfoot Ops guys, Ben and Chuck. How are you, gentlemen?
Doing good.
Great to have you on here tonight. Just want to remind everybody in the chat, y'all keep it clean for us. Y'all respect each other. And we'll probably take questions for Ben and Chuck about the last 15, 20 minutes of the show. So just make sure you put those all in caps for us. It just makes it a lot easier for us to find. All right. Well, we'll take just a minute and let people, let a few more get in here before we get really into what we've got in store for you guys tonight. Remind everybody right quick, you can go and subscribe to Hidden Existence, trying to get Daniela to 1,000 subscribers. She's almost there. She needs about 245 more. So go and subscribe to Hidden Existence. She's got some really good shows up there, some very interesting stuff. I think you guys are going to like it. And you can find Bigfoot Ops on Facebook. The link is going to be in the description. We'll post that link in the chat here throughout. The admins are really good at that. We have great admins for posting links for you guys. So, all right, let's get into it. Ben and Chuck, you guys, you're Bigfoot researchers, investigators. What started it all? What got you into doing this?
Well, maybe I'll go first. It's kind of a neat story. Our research area is out in Ashford, Washington, and I had been going out in that area over the years because my parents owned some property out there, some recreation property by the Nisqually River. And I had heard some vocals, had seen some things on logging roads, dark silhouettes at night. And so I'd always kind of went back and forth to this area. And this was long before I even met Ben. And Ben had been researching the same area also. So when I got a little more involved and was looking for tracks, recording more vocals, finding tree breaks, that was leading me to a specific area, a group of wetlands in our research area. And that's how I met Ben, because Ben was doing the very same thing from his perspective and coming up with the same results as I was, as far as, getting our gut feeling that there was something visiting these areas and maybe feeding at night or frequenting. And so that's kind of how we met. We were finding evidence in the same area. So we decided to join forces and research together. And when we can't be out there together, we're out there separate and covering more ground that way. So that kind of got me involved in the research. Was I had a gut feeling because I was hearing things and seeing, like I say, dark silhouettes on logging roads at night. And thought, I'll bet you there's a Bigfoot out here. That's probably what I'm seeing. I'm not seeing people at night on logging roads. I think I'm seeing a Bigfoot. So it kind of got me more involved, started reading, researching, that kind of thing. So that's right about the 2013 is when I got serious about it. Growing up, I've always was interested in Bigfoot, all the In Search of movies and documentaries. As a kid, I was always fascinated. I didn't really start looking seriously until about 2013.
But it was on your radar. I mean, obviously, I'll ask both of you this question. That what you just talked about being the catalyst, I suppose, for your research, it was already on your radar. So was
Right.
there? So I mean, you had a belief or a suspicion. We'll say that. I mean, a lot of people, are suspicious. They think it could be possible, but wouldn't be surprised if it was all just a hoax. That's probably how I would have felt about it, before I had experiences with them. So as a kid, possibly, when did you really start to believe, you think, that these were out there, and then what you were seeing, you could just say, yes, that's what this is?
Well, as a kid, my dad always went hunting, and my dad never talked about Bigfoot or any of those kinds of things. Being a little kid around the campfire, listen to the other hunters, my dad's buddies and so forth, talk about things that they've heard, tracks they've found. kind of piqued my interest. My dad didn't want to share that with me. And then growing up, I'd ask my dad, "Hey, do you remember when I was 12 and we were on that hunting trip in Randall?" And I would start, trying to recall some things in his mind. And he told me, "Well, yeah, we always thought there might be Bigfoots, but to tell a 12-year-old kid that in the middle of the night around the campfire might scare you. You might want to go home, those kinds of things." Right. So as I got older, I started thinking, well, you know what? They got to be real. And just from what I've seen and experienced, I know they're real. I haven't had a clear daylight sighting, but what I've been experiencing is not happening from deer or elk or coyotes. There's no way.
Right. Well, we will get your experiences. Chuck, same question for you. What got you started?
Oh, I'm Ben. That was Chuck. So.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, I'm just totally off that.
I was backwards there. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no problem. I was never into Bigfoot. Never even thought they existed. This happened 2010. That's when I ended up being a believer then. But I was always skeptical. I thought everybody was crazy. That it was, anytime Bigfoot was brought up, I was an avid hunter and everything from youth. I was in the military. Never ran across anything like that. So I was really skeptical. But I actually was taking my granddaughter down to that particular area in June 2010, and we ran into two of them that were vocalizing. So, and you kind of instantly know that's what it is. So, much as your mind wants to think it's something else, when they're vocalizing like that, you pretty much figure out what it is. So,
sure.
The encounter went on for like about 30 minutes too. So, I could hear the heavy footsteps, screaming going on. Actually, my granddaughter was 7 at the time. She started crying because it scared her really bad and everything. It scared me just as bad. But go ahead.
They are scary. I think they know that they scare us, and could be the very reason they stay away from us.
And I don't think they knew we were there because we actually were down like a hollow or whatever it is, and kind of like an area they couldn't see us. They didn't know we were there when they first come in, and so I tried to see what it was. Got a better look, go up out of the ditch, and try to hide behind a tree and see if I could see what it was. Never could see what it was, but I could hear them clearly.
And that makes sense, because you would think, the nature of this creature is to, remain hidden. If they knew you were there, you would think they wouldn't be, giving themselves away. Although we do hear, there's some instances where these creatures just don't care, and they just come right out on you. So you guys, you got together. Can you talk about any experiences that you've had together, aside from finding evidence? Have you had any interaction, aside from, the oblate, not?
Sure. I can share an experience we had together. It was during the winter, probably late November, so I guess just before winter, but there's some, pretty heavy frost in this area that we research in Ashford. And it was early in the morning. It was, I believe it was a Sunday morning. And when we walk, you can hear our footsteps. We're crunching away, and, we're can't be stealthy in something like that because of the frozen ground. And we made our way back into a wetland area that we hadn't been in a long time. So we wanted to check it out. We were hoping that we would find some tracks in the frosty ground and see where something may have come through recently. And we took a break, and we were standing there kind of just, talking to each other, not real loud, not trying to be quiet, but we weren't, being loud and carrying on. And we could hear coming towards us through the trees and the brush, footsteps, just the same sound that we were making. And so we stopped talking, and we're looking in that direction, fully expecting to see somebody finally emerge from the trees. We didn't see any other vehicles out there, or, didn't hear of anybody else, but it's not uncommon that somebody else could be out hiking like what we were doing. And as we were listening, the footsteps stopped, got silent. They weren't coming towards us no more. After about 3 or 4 minutes, the crunching sound, the footsteps, was making it to our right, kind of skirting around us. And then it stopped again. So we're listening, and of course I've got we got video cameras with us, so we have our recorders with us, and we're not quite sure what to make of it. And then we hear this knock, very loud knock, coming from the right of us where the footsteps were going in the frozen ground. So immediately I get my recorder going and my video camera, fully expecting to see something walk across the trail we just came from. But after the knock, there was got to be at least 10, 12 minutes of silence. So Ben decides he's going to go walk back down the trail we just came from, because that was the direction of the bipedal footsteps we were hearing in the frozen ground. When I say frozen ground, it's grass and leaves and some foliage, and they're all frozen. As soon as you step through it, you hear that crunching sound. And so he leaves my sight for a little while. He's making his way down that trail. And so I have my camera ready, and I'm hoping that he's going to spook whatever it is back my way. Then, there I am. I got my camera. So while he's gone to my left, probably 180 from where I'm looking, I hear another knock. So now this knock's on the other side of us, opposite of the direction Ben went to. And so I turn around, fully expecting to see something going through the trees. And of course, I see nothing. I hear a little bit of movement, and then it's silence again. So this happens for about a half hour, 45 minutes. And then Ben comes walking back because he didn't see anything or hear anything further down that trail he just came from. And while we're both talking, I'm relating to him what I heard, the knock on my other side. While we're talking, we hear the footsteps now pick up again, this time 180 from where we were originally looking. So whatever it was, and I believe there was two creatures doing this, knocking to each other. They totally went right around us. And then I think they got back together again on the other side of us, and they continued down the original path they were heading. They were just able to skirt us all the way around. Now, there's no way those were hunters. They just kept walking right up on us and kept on going through. And those weren't elk knocking to each other. And they weren't bears knocking to each other. It could only be something with a hand, either slapping a tree or using a piece of wood knocking. And I thought that was amazing because it was Sunday morning, mid-morning, so it's during the day. Overcast out, and they didn't take off running. Elk would have got spooked and ran off, and they just casually walked right around us. So I thought that was pretty incredible.
It doesn't take a ton of excuse me, a ton of critical thinking to deduce what this could possibly be. You eliminate every other possibility and what's left over. And obviously for someone that this creature is not a part of their paradigm, it's still easy to explain away and say, oh, well, it was just this, it was nothing, let's keep going, we're good. But being aware, which I think is the most important thing, whether you believe in it or not, I say this all the time, you don't have to believe, just consider it as a possibility when you hear that knock or that scream or that sound, that it could be one of these, and then do exactly what you did. Make those deductions. And you can say you've had a Bigfoot experience, I believe. Anyway, what about you, Ben?
Well, regarding check is actually the same area. We have different sites out there, and this happens to be Delta that he's talking about. And I think actually on our Facebook thing, you'll see it on our different areas. But we were actually setting up a project where we were feeding them, and we wanted to see. The project was basically just to make sure we wanted to see what we were dealing with. We were putting food out there, something was taking it. So we wanted to make sure it wasn't predators, coyote, bear, So we actually put certain items on there. We had cooked Polish dogs, raw Polish dogs in a bag, tennis balls, apples, and we put 3 different stumps out there. And we wanted to see what it actually was taking, stuff off of there. It was amazing because we had the Polish dogs, which was raw in a Ziploc bag. They were always taken. They did this for 3 weeks. we put Polish dogs on a stick that were cooked, because sometimes we cook them out there, and we put them on the stump out there, and they weren't touched. So it kind of eliminates, coyote or bear or cat or anything like that. That was the first hurdle they had to get through. We actually had tennis balls and some apples taken, but almost every time they took the Polish dogs that were in the Ziploc bag, and we never found any of the bags. They took off all 3 stumps, various things, but like I said, we had tennis balls on there. We found a tennis ball gone, or both tennis balls gone, apples. And like I said, the whole goal was just to make sure we weren't dealing with predators out there. Because when you're putting food out there, feeding something, people all make assume it's a Sasquatch or something. It's not always true. There's raccoons and whatever. So we put these other things out there just to see what was taken. So we whatever it was had to have hands or whatever, taking tennis balls. We're checking the areas too to make sure nothing's rolled off or anything like that. But the Polish dogs were always taking the tennis balls. It was kind of weird. So, and actually, I think on the last thing we actually had left a little gifting. It was a little cedar wreath. And I don't think there's even cedar in there. I think for miles. And it actually looked like a little Christmas wreath.
Now, why we think Bigfoot is doing that is it's probably about 12:45 at night. We walked back into this area where we have those items on a stump, and we would put a solar power yard light on those stumps, kind of draw attention to it.
Yeah, when the food was out there.
So Ben and I and another gentleman went back and were checking the stump, see if anything was removed, and then we're hoping to find maybe tracks around the stump to see what kind of animal did it. Well, when we got up to the stump had nothing taken. Everything was just the way we left it. The solar power light still had some energy in it, giving off a soft glow. I decided to keep on walking through the trees, and all these trees are 10 to 14 foot tall. They're not real tall. You can still see the stars and everything through the sky. They're not real dense. There's probably maybe a little cluster, but then there's 10, 12 feet of clearing, so you can easily navigate through that. Well, I made it past the stump and away from Ben, who was checking the stump, and I had my headlamp on at that point, looking, and I thought maybe we'll catch some elk or something out here in this little meadow. And as I'm looking out there, I see nothing. And so I'm going to turn around and go back towards where Ben was checking the stump. And as I turned to my right, my headlamp flashed into the trees, and in the trees, and I didn't get a clear look, so I really can't say it was a Bigfoot, but in the trees was this tall, hair-covered, I believe it was a Bigfoot, but I didn't get a clear look. It was a vertical shape, and as soon as the light hit it, it took off running. Of course, I took a couple quick steps too back towards where Ben was. And when I got back to Ben, he thought it was me running one direction, but here I came.
I could see the whole thing.
He distinctly heard the heavy pounding of the bipedal footsteps running away from us.
It was loud too.
So we were thinking that they come into this area at night and maybe, kind of pick and choose what they want off these stumps. That's why we think that's what was taking those items, because I had that encounter. Something was making its way. And what was kind of, in a way, creepy about that, I got within 10, 12 feet of that tree. I walked right past it. And again, if it was any other kind of animal and I come walking up with a headlamp on like that, they're gonna spook. They're gonna bolt. But this thing let me get right past it. And then when I turned around and put my headlamp directly on it, that's when it got spooked.
They do seem to do that. They do seem to let you just walk right up on them, right on by them, just without moving. Before I hand it over to Danielle, I just want to let everybody know these gentlemen, they don't have a YouTube channel. What they have is a Facebook group, and they take this very seriously. They go out and they have some really good evidence. So you need to go to their Facebook. You'll find a link to that in the description. We'll have some links to that in the chat here also. Bigfoot Ops on Facebook. So go check that out. Some really good audio you guys need to hear. So definitely go check that out. All right, Danielle, it's all yours.
Well, let's hear about the audio. What are you picking up? what have you picked up?
What kind of audio have we picked up? Well, we've recorded everything from grunts, howls, screams, a lot of knocks, and and a lot of people think that the knocks could be, well, that could be anything, but really, to me, the knocks are the most intriguing part of our evidence because, in the middle of the night, up in the woods, and you're the only person out there, what could be knocking that doesn't have a hand, opposable thumb that can grip something? We know it's not elk and animals. The howls and the screams, the grunts,
rocks thrown. There's a lot of rocks thrown at it. So.
But I think the knocks are most compelling because there are cases where coyotes or wolves have sounded a lot like a Bigfoot, and some people can confuse those. But I've never known any other North American animal that makes the sound of a knock. And so, a lot of people, the knocks aren't really exciting to listen to, but I think they're most compelling. But we have recorded howls and screams and grunts, chest slapping. We've recorded some whistles, all in the same area of this little group of wetlands that we go to do our research.
There's a little bit of feedback. Can you hear that? Can you turn your volume down a little bit?
It's not all the time, no. I think it's something building up there.
Yeah. I was watching a link to one of your videos where you were doing a talk on sound interpretation. What are you actually doing? I know people can go and check out that video if they check the link. What way are you studying that audio? What are you doing?
So what we do is we'll capture the audio on a recording device. I'll review it with Audacity, and that's a free software you can download. The Audacity helps me pick out the audio in 1 hour increments of recording. And then if I find something that's suspicious or sounds good, then I'll open up Sonic Visualizer, which is another free software. A lot of researchers use it, including the Olympic Project. They use Sonic Visualizer. And what Sonic Visualizer does, it allows you to see the audio. You can see the pitch frequency of the spectrum that it's running at. And so coyotes and elk, humans, what we believe are Bigfoots making the audios, or all have a specific peak frequency. And you can pick that out. So when I get a good audio and review it from Sonic Visualizer, I can pretty much tell if it's a coyote, even, maybe people camping and, whooping and hollering, people get out in the woods and, they do that kind of thing sometimes. But the Sonic Visualizer helps you narrow down the peak frequency. So, for example, humans are pretty low. We're 500 and lower. Coyotes are usually, 900 and greater. But there's a sweet spot of the peak frequency that's right in between. I'd say it's about 600 and 850, somewhere right in there. A lot of these suspect vocalizations that people think are Bigfoots or interpreting as Bigfoots come right in that peak frequency. So it helps you narrow it down because you can record a good coyote howl and a very likewise Bigfoot howl, and they will sound the same. But when you run them through Sonic Visualizer, you can see differences. So coyotes are usually a lot higher, and Bigfoots are a lot lower. There's a sweet spot. So that helps narrow it down because we can record coyotes all the time that sound like Bigfoots, but if I see something that's got a peak frequency of higher than 900, I just categorize that as coyote, even though I didn't see what made the audio, but the probability is that it came from a coyote. So that's what I'm doing there. I'm using software to look at the vocalizations instead of just listening.
And if there's any doubt, also, you don't make it get categorized into a certain animal. We're just not saying it's squatch or whatever. So if we think it's coyote, it's coyote. If it's elk, we think it's elk or whatever. We don't try to put something out there that the only person we'll be fooling is ourselves. So,
Yeah. Anyway, your pen.
Yeah, let it go away.
Yeah, it's. Are you picking up anything like pops and clicks with the audio? I've been hearing some audio that is like pops and clicks, and some people say they make kind of clicking noises. Are you picking up anything like that?
We get rock clacking. We get some stuff like that. I've heard. Well, I don't say too much. Because if I hear anything like clicking or anything, I assume it's a bear, because bear like to make a snapping noise with their jaws. So if I heard something like that, I'll be assuming it's a bear. To be honest with you. They do rock clacking though. You know, you hear that really loud out there too, besides knocking. But that's some of the things that we know there's no known animal that does that. So, you know, making rock clacks or knocking on anything, there's no animal that I know of, you know. And since we've been out in the woods for so long, we're pretty distinctive on what wildlife is out there. You know, a lot of people say, well, you might think it's an elk or whatever, but they'd be clashing or whatever, you know, during rut. And I said, well, it wasn't during the rut or whatever like that. So you pretty much know in the dark what it is out there. So it's unique though to run across stuff like that. So,
but I haven't heard either any popping or clicking that we think are coming from Bigfoot's mouth. I haven't heard anything like that. And I would imagine it to be pretty close to record or hear something like that, because those are pretty subtle noises that would come from their mouths.
Yeah, we've heard moaning and grunts, you know, pretty loud and everything. Nothing like that, and it's been doing it for quite a while. So,
hey, real quick, we are going to take for being in about the last 15-20 minutes of the show. I see you guys throwing some questions up there, so just save those and repost those for us whenever. I'll put a little post up there reminding everyone when we're going to start taking questions.
Okay. You were saying about wood knocks. Then what do you think about wood knocks? Well, what's your opinion on what's going on with that?
Well, I definitely believe Bigfoots do wood knocking, and you'll hear other researchers and other programs and documentaries that claim that wood knockings didn't come around until after Finding Bigfoot show, when they were mentioning them, which isn't true, because Native Americans have been recording and documenting that, or at least through their storytelling, that Bigfoots knock and they whistle and they make all kinds of sounds. My take on it is I guess my take is I don't know what to take from it, because we've recorded wood knocks daytime, nighttime, when we're present, when we're not present, seemingly directed at us, but in other instances not. So I really couldn't tell you if they do that to warn others about us or they're doing that to humans, because people who are hearing wood knocks are present when a Bigfoot's doing that. So you don't know if it's doing it to them or if they strictly just do it to each other. It seems so random, I guess you would say, that it's hard to tell if they're trying to communicate or, put anything towards us to interpret, or if that's solely between them, or maybe it's a response that they have when they want to release some aggression. Maybe they're just, if they get a little anxious because a human's around, or maybe an elk's around, maybe a bear's around, they do that maybe in response to their situation. So it's hard to say. I really couldn't tell you.
Excuse me. The place where I had my experience, I heard knocking there for years, and I noticed it. I really noticed it. But there were houses relatively close, within a half mile, 800 yards maybe away from where I was. So I'm thinking somebody's hammering on something, and it's just carrying through the woods. Aside from that, what I would hear as soon as I came in the woods, I would hear it. 10 to 12 really hard rhythmic knocks. Pow, 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 pow. And it will stop. And then 10 minutes later, it would happen again. And then no more. A few minutes later, it would happen again. Me never putting together that this can't be somebody hammering or building on something, because it wasn't constant, and I heard it late at night, 2 o'clock in the morning, 400 yards away. Mm-hmm. Just over here to my right, 200 yards away, but still, not being aware, playing those things off. But I heard it for years and years. So why they do it, I don't know. It could be a warning. Maybe they were warning others, hey, here comes somebody just coming in, get in position to to watch them or hide. You know, it could be as simple as that. But I believe you're absolutely right. These creatures, they knock, they hit trees or whatever they're hitting. Could be their hands for all we know.
I think it's bigger, right? Part of their communication. Like I said, we have recorders out there all the time. We're not always present, and they do it. We get recordings on when we're not present. So, you know, and we get some real aggressive knocks, really loud, close by when we're out there also. So you can't say it's one thing or the other. So
I mean, not that way long.
Yeah, and sometimes we know there's more than one creature out there, and they know. And sometimes it seems like it's a single creature doing this too. You know, so, who are they knocking to? That's what we always trying to figure out. You know, when we're not there.
What do you feel about the structures and the glyphs and things like that? Do you feel that's something that came out when Expedition Bigfoot came out, like the knocks?
Well, I've never found or experienced, you know, glyphs, gifting, or anything like that. When we were first getting into researching our area back in 2013, we would find X formations across trails near game cameras that weren't there when we had originally went by them. But since then, you know, that seems to have died down. We're still hearing the vocalizations. We're still finding tracks, but, you know, we don't see X formations like we used to, you know, years ago. But, you know, we've never found, you know, dead hawks and some of those things they put on these programs. We've never found anything like that.
Feathers. You don't use marbles gifting. You don't do too much of that. So, yeah, I really don't think when you're gifting out there, and a lot of people disagree with this, you know, unless you have some kind of goal in mind, I don't know what kind of interaction you plan on getting. So you might get a feather or whatever, but it doesn't mean anything. You know, we don't know if it blew down from the tree, from a nest or whatever. You can't really prove anything. So interacting that way, gifting. The only time I ever give them food or whatever, we're going around an area where we're trying to research or whatever. But I cut it off because I try not to do too much with their, you know, their regular duties. What word I'm looking for? Yeah. Well, we're trying to interfere too much in. We're just trying to learn their normal habits. That's basically what it is. That's what I'm researching and studying, trying to get stuff that they do normal, like the knocking, trying to figure out things like that. But feeding them is just, it's just, you know, taking something out of their day. It's just changing everything. So you're not going to get too much information on that. You might we interacted, like I said, the only time we ever did too much where it was really heavy doing it was just trying to see if we're dealing with a predator or not. So, you know, I always think you should have a goal in mind when you're researching, you know, to come up with some kind of goal, I guess.
You know, and a lot of people think that you know, the gifting has to be a Bigfoot and that their area is secluded only to them and only they know where that area is. And, you know, we used to think that about our research area. Oh, we're the only ones in here. I never see another vehicle. I never run into anybody. But we do camera traps throughout our area. And what we found out over the years is there's a lot of people that go out in the woods during the week and will just, you know, wander around. And so, you know,
middle of nowhere, and they're just wandering around. That's basically what it comes down to too. We're just trying to figure out.
So it's hard to, you know, do a gifting without putting a camera on it to see who's taking it or who's leaving it. You know, it's too much to speculate. And so, you know, and I don't dispute other people's claims about what the gifting is. I'm just saying in our area, I haven't experienced it, and I don't have a controlled enough study to know that it isn't another person doing those things.
Well, you know, as many deer hunting cameras, you talk about cameras, as many hunting cameras. And look, when I had my area I hunted, I had 5 cameras out and never caught anything. Of course, I didn't look really hard. You know, if there were eyes shining in the background, I just thought it might be a deer, and probably was. But there are so many cameras out there. What do you think it is about either these creatures, or is it the camera that we don't have anything better from these cameras than what we have, or that we've seen anyway? What do you think it is?
Well, we're working on that. Because I had some strange things happen to my camera. I actually had a camera just destroyed just a few months ago. and it was actually looking at some bait we had put out there. We had 2 cameras on it. I had one camera fail, and the other one completely turned. They were both actually turned around. One destroyed, and it didn't capture anything on these things. These are actually Browning cameras, but really surprised me because these are actually pretty good cameras for catching stuff. But that's the only instance I have. It doesn't mean it couldn't have been human. I really kind of have my doubts about it because both cameras were looking at one another at the time also. So it should have been watching, one should have been watching the other camera should pick up. I picked it up on nothing on either camera though.
I think, some people think that Bigfoots run the other way from cameras, that they can detect them, smell them, or hear them. And that might be true. I just think the Bigfoots are so aware of their area that when they come into a clearing or a game trail, that they can see them and know to walk around them. You'd have to have an awful lot of cameras. And what we're doing with the cameras, we're just luck of the draw. We're hoping the camera's facing away from them, that when they walk up on it, they don't see it until it's too late. I do think that they can, walk into a game trail or a meadow and they can see something that doesn't belong there. I do construction for a living, so I look at plumb level square in a house every day. And I can look at a house or a post and know that it's out of plumb just at glance. I don't have to go check it with a tool. I could be 100 feet away and I know that post is not plumb. And I think that's the same thing with Bigfoots. They can, go into their area, and if they can, their eyes are drawn to what's not right. A strap around a tree from a camera, a little square box. I mean, just something they're in an area all the time, and all of a sudden there's something different there. I think that's what makes them wary. So, but I think it's good to do the camera traps. I will always do them, even if I think Bigfoots walk around them. It makes me go into an area often. Therefore, I can look for tracks for something on my way in and out. It also allows me to see what other animals are there. So if I have an area and I see a lot of bears on my cameras, then I know that particular area has enough vegetation to support an omnivore, which I think a Bigfoot is. And so that, allows me to do other research there, whether it's looking for tracks or set up audio equipment. So to me, the cameras are a good thing. It makes you go back to an area and check things, and also know what other animals are there.
We'll do. Gotta let that go. I don't know what that is. But all right, we'll do 2 more. I'll do one, Danielle do one, and then we'll start taking questions from the chat. You mentioned tracks. Well, I'll make mine a 2-part. I might be stealing from Danielle. I don't know. We'll see.
I'll go through the questions, but you carry on.
I usually do. So you mentioned tracks. Have you gotten any good tracks that you can say is absolutely a Sasquatch?
Well, it's tough to say absolutely Sasquatch because you don't see what's making the track.
Sure.
But we have cast some tracks that, are, in my opinion, great candidates, or somebody's out there totally hoaxing us. They've got the toes.
That's what I mean. That being the distinction. It's a foot. It's definitely not anything else. It's either a fake or it's a Sasquatch.
Exactly. Yep. And we've found tracks and have cast them. And over the years, we found multiple sizes, which if you're in an area that's got, a group of Bigfoots in it, you should get different size tracks all the time. So if you're finding the same size track over the last 6-8 years, there's probably something else, going on there. And we've found 8-inch tracks and 10-inch tracks and 16-inch tracks, and that should be normal. So if you have a real population in an area, you should have multiple size tracks. On our Facebook page, you'll see some tracks that are on there.
16,
some are very detailed, and some are vague. Some are impressions. But we have gotten some that's got some toes in them and look really good, in my opinion.
Well, catching these tracks, to me, that should be a clear indication that there's not someone out there. Why would someone hoax tracks in a place where there actually are Sasquatch? So one more, and then Danielle can have it, and we'll do questions from the chat. Make sure you put those questions in caps for us, please. We don't want to miss any good ones. What do you think these creatures are? If you had to guess, what do you think they are?
I'll let Ben answer.
Don't start with me on that one. Every time I think it's something, it ends up being something else.
It's all
I really don't know because, like I said, I've seen them. And it's just because you relate so much stuff to maybe like apes, right? And their behaviors, but then you see other things that change your mind and how smart they are. You know, they're a little bit more intelligent than that. The communication, the knocking. I says you just want to throw your hands up every time you can't really say. You can't really relate it to anything. You can't say it's Neanderthal or caveman or whatever because there's nothing to draw to. So I really don't know because, like I said, every time I make a theory on it, it just happens to be blown out of the water anyway. So we're just what we're trying to figure out. That's why we're researching out here, just to maybe get a better idea. That's it. I can't tell you.
I said human primate. You go with that.
That's where, until I see otherwise, that's kind of where I lean towards is that it's a North American primate between an orangutan, gorilla, and us, and where they are on that family tree, because they have the same kind of foot we do, other than supposedly they have double balled foot, the hinge foot,
and
which
hands.
we don't, and hands exactly, but in our area, what we're experiencing are the grunts, the knocking, the howls, and that's a lot of what gorillas do. So
break tree branches, push over trees. Gorillas have that same traits that they do. A lot of stuff that's gorilla traits that I didn't even realize that they do. But the hiding and stuff like that, they like to hide a lot. Be real stealthy. Sometimes they'll sound like a bulldozer going through the brush, and sometimes you won't even know they're there. So, depending on what they want to do, I guess they own the woods. I know I don't. So,
right. Me, it's not from like the same thing you do, Chuck. Is human-shaped feet, relatively. There's no divergent toe in other words. Human-shaped hands, hooded noses. Apparently, what images we have seen of them.
Mm-hmm.
They have nose, and most any other primate, the higher order of primates on the planet don't have that. So that's what makes me lean more toward a human primate. The apparent awareness that this creature has, aside from gorillas are not aware enough to go to any length to stay hidden from you. You could probably walk up on a gorilla. I think it's very remote in the extreme that you would actually walk up on one of these creatures and it not know you're there. So I think they're that aware, at least of themselves and of us, to stay away. Just what I think. Could be 1,000% wrong. Did you come up with any questions there, Daniela?
Who ever tried using the mirror trick?
You got to start saying their name, Daniela.
Sorry, Darren Demetro. I'm sorry.
The mirror trick.
I get them wrong too.
No, I think Finding Bigfoot has done a lot of that stuff. A lot of people want to do that. They unless I had a camera on there just to see what his reaction is, to me, it serves no purpose. Again, it's the goal. Putting something out there. You could put food out there, get the same reaction or whatever. But I'm sure they've seen herself in the water. I'm sure these creatures see one another, so they pretty much figure it out. To me, it's like tricking them, trying to trick a thing into doing something. And that's probably pretty much what they're going to shy away from. If you put something out there blatant, anytime we've ever probably put something out there like that, like a trap or something, they pretty much figure it out, But no, we never tried to mirror trick, even though, a lot of stuff you try, you want to try out there, but it doesn't serve any purpose to me. Yeah, I'm researching anyway. So we're not after the experience. We're, to me, a lot of people want to have that, just the experience out there, being around them, whatever. We're actually trying to research their patterns or their behaviors. So try not to interfere with that too much. Again, that's what it comes down to. So for me anyway, Chuck, he's pretty much, I don't know.
Well, and I'm not sure what your chat room questioner is referring to. Now I know that in zoos and in controlled areas, they put mirrors to film the reaction of primates or other animals that see their own reflection. And I'm not sure if that's what they're referring to or not when they.
What they were putting a mirror and another mirror so that you can see around a corner. This is what my interpretation, maybe like a periscope, is you can look in one direction and the reflection gives you the view.
To me, the mirror thing is the self-aware test.
Oh, is it? Right. Oh, well.
I think the mirror.
That's what I was referring to. Is
now kind of what we've done with that is maybe kind of the same thing would be we will sometimes have our GoPros pointing behind us when we're walking trails. So the last person on the trail will have a GoPro pointing backwards. I've had, people say that, when you pass them, then they step out into the open or they stand up from behind a bush or something. And that's one way to capture them. We haven't gotten any results from that, of course, but, if that's what they're referring to, it is a good idea if you're able to do, to have that kind of gear and stuff all the time. We've tried it, so we just got to be a little more disciplined to always make sure the last guy in line is the same last guy, so he doesn't end up in front and films the guy in front of him. But those are all, good different techniques to try.
Okay.
And these are all good ideas. So, don't get me wrong. There actually people like to try all those. Oh, here comes the
Marianne, Matrix of Adventures.
Read the
Child Minds.
I see the question on there. If charge. I don't know. I don't know if in some of the instances you want to call that.
Yeah, I've never had a bluff charge. I've never ever have had impressions come upon me to leave, to look here, to look there. Nothing like that's ever happened. There have been occasions where you start to smell something a little different. I haven't, and I know it's an animal, but I've never had the distinct skunky smell that some people record, or sulfur smell, or.
I've had that smell. Yeah, I've actually walked in. It was so potent that it was like you think it's something on your clothes or whatever. Actually walk into it. I walked through an area. 5 minutes later, come back, and I actually ran into that smell. And that's actually, I heard wood knocks off to the left-hand side also. But it's such a potent smell. Pungent is the word I want to say. It's actually like you stepped in something. You're smelling yourself like, it's that strong. It can make your eyes water. But I've only had that instance happen once. Just let you know. And it was more like I don't know. It wasn't skunky. It was more like a feces, garbage smell. I think I want to put it up to, and dog mixed with all that. Musty smell. I believe I've also been out there too, where you smell like flowers. I think it was females. Where it's real heavily. I don't know what I'm trying to think of. This isn't lilac. It might be lilac. I don't know what my wife's telling me about the smell, but it's really heavy, potent smell of that too, like flowers out there. And there's no flowers out there, and right, so it should be just pine. Pine is all you're smelling out there, Douglas fir. So
I know what I call and that audio, that feedback.
And no bind speaking. I've never had any of that happen out there. I've been in close proximity, and mine thing, I will kind of roll my eyes at that because I always think it's a lot of people's imagination and people bring anything. But like I said, I have not encountered anything like that in almost 10 years out there.
Right.
I don't know.
I try to roll my eyes at anybody, but I kind of feel the same way. I think I would have to experience it. But, I talked to a woman that lives right here in the same state as me. She swears. She's 68 years old. She lives by herself. She says they talk to her every day. And I'm trying.
And I have friends that tell me the same thing. I just tell them I don't, other researchers tell me the same thing. And I've never experienced it. So I can't say it.
Could absolutely be something else. Maybe it's something else that Bigfoot gets blamed for. You were talking Chuck, about the howls and stuff like that. I grew up in South Mississippi hearing red wolves. We have red wolves around here, and they would howl, and I knew it would be them because they would howl, and then 30 minutes before dark, you see them come running through. These are red wolves. And I've heard it my whole life. And then I hear some of these recordings, and it's the exact same thing I heard. And they're called Bigfoot mating call or whatever it is. How in the world anybody would know what the Bigfoot is doing, I don't know. But that's just you were absolutely right about that. And I wanted to mention that earlier, that I heard this, and someone actually got on to me one time about saying that. But I know what I heard. You know, sounds of the woods. When you grow up, you hunt, you hear these things, you know what they are. It's the things that are different.
Right.
You hear and then apply it. You're actually hearing Bigfoot and applying it to other animals. So it doesn't sound quite right if you're aware. That whole being aware, that just it matters so much. And again, talking about the odors, not to take over the show. What I smelled in South Florida was like nothing else I'd ever smelled anywhere. And we knew they were around us. But it smelled like urine. It was strong urine smell, and like the dish rag had been out for a while. You know, that dank type of stale, maybe mold, and mixed with it. That's the best way I can describe it. Is that it's not a hog. And I've smelled hogs. They smell like the bathroom, kind of.
I was going to say it's nasty.
It's a terrible odor. Miss Jamie, Cotterill. Ben, have you noticed any seasonal changes in activity?
Well, they're there every month. We've got all kinds of recordings. They do know they go up into higher elevations in the wintertime. We'll find at some of our higher sites. This year's been really kind of weird, though, because they've actually been down in the lowlands a lot. More than usual. This year's we've had more day sightings this time this particular year. I have anyway, but they don't seem to migrate. They said we've been going to the same spot for I'm going on 7 years to check, and I've been out there for 10 years. This just seems it kind of surprised me. Like I said, every time we think we figured out something, they do something different. You know, but we had several different sites out there, and we always seem to record them at all these sites all year round.
Yeah, so how we determine that is we'll set up audio almost at least twice a month the whole year, and we will and we have more than just one recording device. We would use 10 to 12 at a time, spread them out over miles. I mean, they're about a half mile apart from each other to see if we get some pings in our areas. And we'll document it when we hear it, where we hear it, and what elevation. And they seem to stay close to the same area. Now, we got to drive to some of these locations down the logging road, but for a Bigfoot to just walk straight to these places through the woods, would be nothing, at their stride. They could cover or move around in a 120 square acre area very easily. And not run into anybody. So I think they stay within a main area. We believe they visit these wetlands at different times of the year so they don't exhaust the food source that are found in them. And so we've never had a time of the year where they were silent or no evidence and no nothing for 3 or 4 months at a time. We've always been able to record something every month in these areas. So, and
I'm retired, so I get to go out once a week, sometimes twice a week. So I get to get out here a little bit more. Sometimes if the weather's real bad, that's one time I don't get it like I used to, go out in the storms and that kind of stuff, researching. I'm not that hardcore anymore, but I used to be at one time. But
we still need people out there doing what you guys are doing in the capacity that you're doing it. You take it seriously. You don't stop doing it. And I've heard it so many times how Bigfoot migrates, and there's just no possible way to know that, because of the nature of the creature. They're already hard to find. You don't see them. The experiences you have with them are usually either indirect, or the direct experiences you have is you hear it, you smell it, it's far away from you. But just because you're out there and you don't hear or smell or experience anything doesn't mean they're not there. So I just think it's impossible to know whether these creatures migrate or not. So
that's what's nice about the recordings, because like I said, you don't have to be there all the time. You can spread them over miles, and we get to hear them all the time. So, and they'll be 7 miles away, and we'll be at one particular site, and they'll be over there.
Absolutely. Crow Creek, Tony Hill. He says, "Have you spent the night?"
Yes, many nights out there. Had a lot of activity out there in a lot of areas at night. It's a little bit different.
Different
activity too. So
we will spend some nights. We will hear howls and things off in the distance. We hope we have a recorder close by to get it. And then there's other nights where we think we're getting skunked. We don't hear anything. It's quiet. No knocks, no howls, no coyotes, no nothing. And then like an hour after we turn in, so just after midnight, if we're thinking, well, there's no activity, let's just turn in early and get up early and go and do some tracking. Our recorders pick up all kinds of activity around our campers and our trucks.
Yeah. In camp, we like to say. So
yeah, we've had lawn chairs moved right outside our camper. Of course, I don't hear it because I'm asleep, but our audio picks it up. So we leave audio going within our camp.
And they pick up our farm units, our equipment, look at it, play with it, put it back down. You can hear all this stuff on the audio. So it's so much better. But if you try to put a camera out there, you don't seem to get anything on the camera, but you can get it on the audios all day long. So, but it's unique. But it'll go on. It isn't just for just a few minutes. It lasts for hours. They're running around out there, slapping on the trees, pushing over the trees, and you're trying to sleep through all this, by the way. And it gets a little monotonous. You always worry about they're going to push a tree down on top of your RV. I have a pretty big RV out here. That's the only thing I'm not a tent sleeper anymore, so I don't camp out in the tents anymore. And I like to do that at least. We used to do it every month, but now we probably do it once every 3 months. Kind of colder. I'm getting older. Don't like to be out there as much, overnighters. I go out there during the day all the time, twice a week. That's good enough for me, but during the summertime and spring when it warms up, we like to get out there a lot and spend the night, a couple of nights out there. So, yes, it's great questions, by the way.
River Ridge with Terry. Have you found any animal kills that are hard to explain? Anything innocuous that you would say, wow, this could have been, one of these creatures?
Don't you answer? I've run across a couple of elk with their a cow and a calf that had their necks busted and just laying out there. They weren't shot. They were just laying there side by side. That's about the only thing I thought was different, because I don't know what it would take to break their necks and not eat it. They laid there for a few days and then something finally drug them off. But both their necks were busted. They weren't shot, so I don't know what could have did that. So
in our research area, on our game cameras, we see bears, coyotes, and cougars. So, not a lot of animal kills are lasting long out there. I mean, if a Bigfoot is, taking his pieces, it's not long. I think that another predator's cleaning up what's left. So I haven't found anything. And with cougars in the area, you should find more deer kills, but we really don't. It's pretty rare we even come up on piles of bones from the cougars. They're hauling them off, and we're just not seeing. And there's obviously cougars there, and they got to eat, but we're not finding much as far as deer and elk killed.
Yeah, and there's other predators out there. Like I said, the coyotes, the bears, bobcats, cougars, raccoon. There's just about every animal you can think of out there. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And you would think, and unless it was something just really telling, a lot of big tracks around to kill. But even then, it would be too hard to distinguish, just because you found something laying there between. It could have been anything, a bear, it could have been a cougar, coyotes. Usually, though, those creatures are going to leave a scene. It's going to be, especially for a big animal, there's going to be quite a scene there involved with that. As far as Sasquatch, we don't even know. I had a guy tell me just not too long ago that Sasquatch doesn't eat meat. And that's just one of those things that you just can't possibly know. How do you know what they don't eat? I just don't get that. So,
well, I know that we cook many good things out there when we stay out there overnight. Like, so we know they take biscuits. That's a preferred thing. That bread product seems like they like to eat a lot of bread. We've had meat out there. Never had them take bacon or anything like that, but we had to test with the Polish dogs, you know. So yeah, I would say probably cooked meat.
You know, you think you got the cooked ones and the uncooked ones. The uncooked ones are gone. You know, if it's anything else, they're going to take the cooked ones. That's just how I see it. I'm sorry. But
whatever they're hungry for, that's what I would say. You know, if they want, you can't tell them what to eat or not eat. They play with their food sometimes. You know, take a little pieces or whatever. So you can't.
One of those things we're going to have to sit them down one day when we get really close with them and ask them, "Hey, what in the world is this?"
Yeah.
But we've come up to the end of our hour. We really appreciate you gentlemen coming on here with us tonight. Just want to let everybody know what we got coming up. I'm at home for the first time since Christmas. And I came home to finish the shopping for our expedition. It's coming up really soon, next month, as a matter of fact. And I have got a list this long. So I had to come and get some money out. I've spent all the money that everybody put in. Now I had to go get my money out so we can finish this thing. And I got with Clay last night. We got a long list of stuff to get. So that's what I'm home doing now. We're getting prepared for this thing. Everybody's getting amped up and ramped up. We're going to have a meeting tomorrow about it. There was something that was on here. I want to show this. This is G-Man and the Biker. I don't know who this is. He says, "We will see you in Florida, Kerry. You won't see us, but we will see you." I don't know what that means. If you're a person and you're going to be out there where we are, we're probably going to see you with the equipment that we're going to have out there. So unless you can hide your heat signature real well, we're probably going to see you. As many thermals as we're going to have out there, especially with the thermal drone. But hey, we appreciate you guys coming on. Again, make sure you go to the link in the description, Bigfoot Ops. Go and join into their Facebook groups. Just a small questionnaire you got to finish and get in there and check out their evidence, the audio they have. I guess you guys have video and images and all other things. What about a YouTube page? You guys thought about that?
I'm actually working on that. This actually today, I had my granddaughter. I'm not that smart when it comes to computer stuff, so I actually had to give her to help me out with editing and stuff. We're going to start doing that, though.
If I can do it, you can do it. Well, look.
I actually have a YouTube page. Just type in my name, Chuck Madsen, and I got maybe 4 videos. I'm a beginner at posting videos and putting content in it, but there's some recordings there. Check them out, and if somebody wants to, leave a comment as to what they think I'm seeing, if they disagree, I welcome all that stuff. It makes me go back and rethink, everything, look at a different perspective. So,
hey, YouTube, it's for amateurs. We're all amateurs at this. If you might have heard that, Chuck Madsen. Go subscribe to that on YouTube. Check out what he's got there. Once again, make sure you go and subscribe to Hidden Existence. We're trying to get Danielle up there to 1,000. So thanks again, gentlemen, for joining us here tonight.
Thank you.
Check us out Wednesday. Who we got Wednesday? Kim?
We've got Brandon from Bronzini Bigfoot.
Bronzini Bigfoot. Brandon's going to be on. That's going to be Wednesday, 7:00 p.m. Central. You guys be there for that. Y'all take care and have a good night.
All right. Good night.